Well, welcome everyone. I'm just so excited for this community conversation today. My name is Wendy Martinez. I'm the Director of Housing Solutions, which is an initiative of the Community Foundation. Thank you all for coming together for this discussion in what is really an often complex topic, funding affordable housing. Thank you to our partners, Navigate, the Jackson-Teton County Housing Department, Community Housing Trust, Habitat for Humanity, Tyler Davis, for sharing your expertise with us today. First, I wanted to begin with some background on the Community Foundation's Housing Solutions Initiative and why the foundation is hosting this community conversation. The foundation's mission is to improve lives through philanthropic leadership, which includes acting as a leader, catalyst, and a resource for the community. The Community Foundation's strategic initiative, strategic plan for 2022-2025 is focused on building a more resilient and equitable community. And to achieve this goal, the foundation identified and adopted 3 priorities: strategic initiatives, impact investing, and resource development. Specifically, strategic initiatives aim to take action on root causes of community issues. They leverage partnerships by convening diverse voices and then putting funding to work on pressing community identified needs. This led the foundation to launch 3 community-wide initiatives focused on behavioral health, housing, and education and families. Recognizing that these 3 community challenges are complex and cannot be addressed by one organization or one sector alone, our approach is to foster community partnerships and build cross-sectoral networks that can advance solutions. And these solutions are collaborative and address the gaps and inequities within the system. With this framework, the Housing Solution Initiative aims to support our partners doing critical work getting the units on the ground, but also leveraging partnerships and building that network of community members, organizations, and institutions across sectors who can collaboratively advance housing solutions. And just to highlight a few key efforts so far, we launched housing initiative grants under the foundation's Catalyst Grants program. And in response to the extended Teton Pass closure, we partnered with some homeowners who had a spare bedroom or a guest home and matched temporary housing opportunities for those commuting from Teton Valley, Idaho. And this was a great example of a private sector partnership, as well as helping to fill a gap in a moment of emergency. And in the summer of 2024, we launched the Housing Dashboard, our first project-based collaboration in partnership with Legacy Works and 17 community partners. The Housing Dashboard is part of the Teton Community Wellbeing Dashboard, and it was facilitated and stewarded by Legacy Works. The Community Wellbeing Dashboard, that wheel you see behind me, is really to highlight different core elements that make up a community's well-being. And the model was initially developed by Legacy Works in Santa Barbara and then introduced to the community, to our community, with the support of the foundation in 2023. Really focusing on the foundation's 3 initiatives. So this tool is structured by community and for the community, and it is critical because this tool should continue to evolve according to our community's needs. So Legacy Works again facilitated the construction of the dashboard and will steward the data. The foundation convened partner organizations to collaboratively create this shared housing data tool. And this included several months of meetings where the group met regularly to develop this tool. And then during this process, the group landed on the following data priorities: community engagement and education, equity, housing needs and opportunities, funding, which also includes understanding the capital gap. Our goal is for the dashboard to remain an online tool where users can explore interconnected data metrics that really affect the supply and demand in our housing landscape. Since its launch, we will continue to receive feedback and refine and evolve the tool in partnership with LegacyWorks and other partner organizations to help create the tool. The housing dashboard is linked on the foundation's website under the Housing Solutions Initiative, and you can also scan this QR code and explore a little bit on your phone. So in response to the dashboard feedback and in collaboration with cross-sectoral partners, we're hosting this conversation today to dive deeper into that capital gap and funding strategies to build affordable and workforce housing, which again is a key focus area identified by this group that created the dashboard. So I'm really excited for this conversation today, as well as continue to grow into this work alongside our partners. So just to go over our agenda for today, first we will dive into an introduction of the capital gap data and funding strategies led by Christine Walker with Navigate. And next, we will dive into some partner organization presentations where they will spotlight housing projects and funding strategies used to build the capital gap, to bridge the capital gap. So we're joined by Krista Greenville, Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of the Greater Teton Area, Ann Cresswell, Executive Director of the Community Housing Trust, April Norton, the Director of Jackson-Teton County Housing Department, and Tyler Davis, a private developer in our community. And we will close this morning's event with a panel discussion, which will be co-facilitated by Christine and I, featuring our housing developers. There were some note cards in the entrance in case you all, get questions along with presentations and don't feel comfortable, voicing those. We can collect those and ask them during the panel, but also feel free to jump in with your questions. So with that, I'll invite Christine over and we can dig into the data.
Hi, I'm Christine Walker with Navigate, a small real estate development consulting firm. Small meaning showing myself. And we focus on community housing solutions. So first of all, I really want to thank the Community Foundation for sponsoring this event. I think it's a great opportunity to raise the understanding in the community. And for everybody that's attending, this is a great turnout for an event. So very excited. And then I guess I have to also thank. We have amazing experts here that are working in our community. We've got April Norton with the Housing Department. We've got Ann Cresswell with the Housing Trust. We've got Chris Greenville with Habitat, and we have where's Tyler? Tyler Davis is hiding over here. So he's hiding behind. Yeah, but they're going to be able to share some great stories about the work that they've been doing. And my job is to really just begin by setting the stage and giving a little bit of background on probably their challenges in developing housing that's available for people that work in our community, that live in our community. So I'm going to go about answering kind of these questions about who we're trying to serve, why the market alone won't fix it, and then how the capital gap is bridged. And I want to start with this, who we're serving in this bridge. This is a really big, big graphic to kind of wrap your head around. It has a ton of information, but is really designed to get at, it's designed to really portray kind of the community. I'm going to go and try to point at this because I find it hard to kind of see it and look through it. So I'm trying to figure out what slide I'm going to go to. I think there's more people closer to this one. So I'm going to try to look at this, but there's just a couple of things to kind of go over. First of all, this is a study that was based on a study that was done in January of 2022. So the data isn't up to date as far as when you're looking around the outside of the rainbow, which shows the incomes. Today, that middle income, which is right in the middle there, it's about at 120,000 for a family of three. So this slide attempts to capture kind of the dynamics of the housing in a community and what's demanded by people that are living in your community. So from the left to the right, we start with supportive housing or transitional housing, move into subsidized rentals, then more affordable rentals, and then to entry-level home ownership, move up housing, and then finally high-end housing. That little, what I think looks like kind of bowling balls, those black things that have the AMI levels, that's just showing the income categories. And typically where people fit in the income range of being able to have housing in those different areas. So if we're looking at the little gray areas at the bottom, which are kind of hard to see, that's just showing in our community renter population on this level here, the percentage of households in that population, and then the owner population is at the bottom. So for example, in the middle range here, we've got 12% of our owner population in that 80 to 100% of the area median income and 14% of our rental population. The other thing that I think is very important here is that it shows where the market is functioning and where, so we're not having to address housing through other means. But in our community, we're seeing kind of that's on the outer rim, the arrow there is that our market is functioning for a rental product at about 110, 120% of the area median income. Fairly, it's producing better at the higher ends. And then our market for home ownership is producing at about 250 to 300% of the area median income. So what we're looking at today is housing below that level and where generally a subsidy is needed because the market isn't addressing the housing supply there. So another piece of this is in red on kind of the outer area here. It shows where federal subsidies or federal public funds are available. So it's less than 80% of the area median income. So when we're looking at addressing housing that's above that level, we're looking at using either public funding sources locally, or we're looking at regulations, or we're looking at subsidies through philanthropy and business investment. And we'll go into those. And I think the other slides are not quite as complicated or the graphics, but there's still a little bit of graphic work that's going on. Okay. So with this one, this is just giving us an example of the capital gap. So we're looking at what it costs to build, and then what a family of three can afford to purchase, the purchase price is, and then what that capital gap is. And so I'm just going to go through some of my assumptions here. And the first part of it is construction costs. What we're seeing today is about $550 per square foot for a very modest home. We're looking at here a townhome that's 2 bedrooms and it's about 1,000 square feet size. That doesn't include a garage. It's just your basic home. Construction costs, then land costs are about $150,000. Because $150. $150,000. That's if you're using like the plan unit development, kind of subdividing the land, and so that your land costs are a little less expensive per door. Our infrastructure costs, this is basically just putting in a couple of parking spaces, doing some grading, putting in sidewalks, road improvements that might be required, utilities, etc. So that's about, see this on my screen, 50,000. And then soft cost is just 25% of your infrastructure and construction costs. That includes your design, your permitting, your developer fees, your sales expenses, etc. So that comes out to about $900,000 to build the 2-bedroom townhome. That's about 1,000 square feet in size. What a household earning the median income or earning about $120,000 for the 3-person household, they can afford to spend about $400,000 to purchase a home. That means we have a capital gap of about $500,000. Now that's going to vary depending on the household you're serving. So if you're going to serve a lower income household, that capital gap goes up. If you're gonna serve a higher income household, that capital gap goes down. That answer, but I think it's done. So then kind of looking at, now we're gonna look at a rental product and kind of go through kind of the same exercise here with that house. So we're gonna start with construction costs. We see a little bit lower construction costs for a multifamily product stacked. Housing, meaning it's on top of the other instead of side by side. It's about $475 per square foot is what we're seeing. Again, the infrastructure, is gonna be a little higher with your, because we're looking at a multifamily, development that's serving 80% of the area median income. There's 30 units in this building, 2 bedrooms, they're about 1,000 square foot. That's including your corridors as well. So the bedrooms themselves would be a bit smaller. So our total construction cost at that level would be $14.2 million. Our infrastructure would be about $1.8 million. I didn't put a land cost in here because with multifamily, it's kind of all over the map. At times it's hard to kind of pin that down. So just remember, that's not in this equation. Soft costs, again, it's going to be about 25% of just your construction costs and your infrastructure costs. So for a 30-unit apartment building, it would be about $20 million to produce. So now I'm going to look at that other chart on the other side of it to see how much debt we can carry with rental incomes. So the monthly rent is going to be based on a household earning 80% of the area median income, 3-person household. So the monthly rent is going to be about $2,400. The annual rent for the 30-unit apartment complex would be about $860,000. And then I'm going to subtract out the operating expenses that are estimated at about $5,000 per unit per year. So you'd have a net operating income of $710,000, and that would support a loan of about $9 million. And so your capital gap in this case would be about $11 million for a 30-unit apartment. So then we're going to get to the other side of this, which is more fun, and how we're bridging the capital gap. Is that this is just an example of how that apartment building could be funded. So we start out with that loan of $9 million, and then we could get some business investment of another 4, and then some public funds would be into this, right? Helping us purchase the land of $4 million, and then bridging that totally would be philanthropy about $3 million. This is just a sample example. These are different buckets, the loans, the business investments, the public funds, and the philanthropy that will go into a little bit more detail and bring out some of the items. And then our different partner organizations are going to talk about specific projects and how they've bridged the capital gap in order to build housing that's available for our local workers. And I'm going to go back because I just also wanted to bring up the difference between a values-based development and a profit-based development. In that values-based development, that's when we're looking to provide low market housing in our community. And a profit-based is just a market rate development. And in that case, there wouldn't be this capital stack. They would be looking at just that top level alone to be able to support debt on a market rate project. And when we're looking at an ownership product, it would be just looking at those sales proceeds to support building the housing. That's why we see it serving higher income levels. So if we go, I'm going to go back even another slide. In this monthly rent, if we're doubling that monthly rent and serving 160% of the area median income, they're about able to bridge that capital gap in order to make a successful project. Okay, back onto this. So we're going to start with just some loans, and I'm going to be running through these kind of very high level because we're going to have our different panelists be able to talk about the details of what they've used and how they work in practice. But first of all, with loans, we're going to have short-term loans. Usually that's for construction. It's usually about 2 to 3 years, depending on how quickly you can lease something up or sell the home in the project. And then we have long-term loans that are really associated with a rental product. And so that's going to be more of a permanent loan, long-term loan that's going to last 30 to 40 years. So with the short-term loans, we have private investment. Typically, we see kind of some social impact investing where we're able to secure lower interest rates. Social impact would mean that instead of investors making a higher return, they're willing to accept a lower rate of return in order to make an impact socially. Then we have really traditional bank financing, which would be going to your traditional banks in town or a national bank in order to get financing. We also have some opportunities for some tax exempt financing from banks. We also have some federal programs through HUD in order to create some kind of non-recourse loans to provide better terms and to provide some guarantees. And then we have the public sector that typically bonds, and a general revenue bond would be an example. So like with the SPET funds, the housing authority could, through an organization, sell bonds to investors. The bonds would be paid back with the revenue that comes in through the SPET collections. So it enables an organization to get the funds in advance of those funds being collected to move faster. I'm just talking about the no question requirements. So then business investment. Okay, I'll try to speak up. Thanks, Bob. I thought I was speaking pretty loudly, but I guess we should have done the microphone. So business investment, this is an example of this picture up here. It's a Powder Home Apartments. This is developed by Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. So different ways, that's one way for a business to invest in housing is direct development of housing. We have also have private investment where they could be a part of the project. It's not as common until we start hitting the higher income levels in order to have private investment in housing. And then we have also sometimes in a project, there will be some mixed of use in order to have the and market rate homes instead of just below market homes in the project too. The right to purchase is a tool that really was founded by the Housing Trust. And it's an option for businesses to purchase rights for their employees, basically to move up in the line so that their employees have housing. Their employees have the right to purchase that housing. With large wait lists in communities, this is a really valuable tool for businesses for them to get housing specific to their employees. A similar option is with the master leasing, and that's more for a rental product. It allows the businesses to purchase the right for their employees to have the first right to lease one of those units. And then, as I talked briefly, was direct development. An example of the direct development is the Big Sky, Montana, where the resort now has housing for about 50%, over 50% of their employees. This is the Big Ski Lodge, and Big Sky recently opened, and I think it was April. And currently they have about 70% of their resort's housing inventory at the base and walking distance to the ski area. This is a big one. So public funds typically in the housing world are our biggest sources of funds. As mentioned, first on federal funds are only available to households earning up to 80% of the area median income. You'll hear a lot about the low income housing tax credit or LIHTC. But it accounts for, in the US, it accounts for about a quarter of all new apartment housing stock that's constructed. It's the primary source of federal funds. And it's about, in 2023, it was about $13 billion. What I find interesting, and maybe you will too, is that it's not the biggest source of funding for housing. The mortgage interest deduction is actually the biggest source, and that's closer to $70 billion. So the LIHTC program, we're going back to that, is a program through the US Treasury. and that reduces federal income taxes in exchange for people investing in affordable housing developments. There, you'll hear 9% and 4% tax credits. 9% tax credits are designed to subsidize about 70% of the construction costs, and 4% are designed to cover about 40% of your total construction costs. There's a limited number of tax credits that are allocated, and they're allocated by state and by their population. So with Wyoming having a small population base, we have a small allocation of tax credits. The state's housing finance agency, which in our case is the Wyoming Community Development Authority, they have a process for a competitive process for allocating those tax credits, and it's based on the state's qualified allocation plan, because it's a federal program, it has all those kinds of acronyms. In Jackson, our ability to access those funds are severely hampered, basically because of the lack of allocation for population and the 9% tax credits in particular. And so we would probably anticipate being able to be successful getting tax credits about every 5 or 6 years. And we have been successful getting those tax credits every 5 or 6 years, so. The next layer is federal kind of more grants. These are what you would see kind of through the state, because they typically are passed through. So they're federal funds that are passed through the state. So you have community development block grants, you have home funds, you have the National Housing Trust Fund, but they all serve kind of different lower income levels. So the community development block grants are typically available for that 80% below the area median income. Home funds are typically a little bit lower at 50%, and then the housing trust fund is even lower at about 30%. Then our local funds is where we have been successful in securing SPEC fund. In 2022, secured $80 million for housing. That was an amazing accomplishment. And it's helping the different housing organizations, town and county, and then also some of our local hospital and school districts. There's also general funds that are allocated each year from the town and counties for housing development, but also to fund long-term stewardship and management of the units that we have, so that they're utilized as intended. And that we have an ongoing inventory of homes that continues to grow, that's available and affordable to our local residents. And then there's other public assistance, from density bonuses to fee waivers to expedited review processes, and sometimes reduced parking as well, to make the project more economically viable. So this picture is of the Carnes Apartments. This is through St. John's Health. Has 15 units, 5 studios, 10 2-bedroom units, and some livability features and going to producing elements that it was making. So other communities, Wyoming is a little bit hampered at the state level. So giving some examples of what's been done in other communities, in particular Colorado. But at a statewide level, Colorado has Proposition 123, which is a percentage of income taxes over a certain level. This past year, they're expected to collect $310 million in that program, and it's used for land banking and below market equity, and then also to really try to encourage manufacturing of modular and factory-built homes, so ways to reduce construction costs. There's also the real estate transfer tax. That was approved, in the late 80s, and small communities adopted it before there was the Taxpayer Board of Rights that changed their constitution and has a little line in there that says they can't raise any additional real estate transfer taxes. So there's a lot of communities that still have that. For example, Aspen collects that, and last year with a 1%, 2021, which is probably, after COVID or during COVID where prices really went up, is that they collected 20 million, city of Aspen, in real estate. So significant. They also have, Colorado also has, a state tax credit, which plays in combination with their federal tax credits. State of Idaho, shout out to Teton Valley, is that the state had $50 million in ARPA funds, and they allocated that to workforce housing projects. Teton Valley was able to get $8 million for 2 different projects, so that's great. And then the final one, talking about Dillon, which has Dillon, Colorado, that's partnering with the Forest Service there, the White River National Forest, and the Summit County and the town of Dillon. And they're using Farm Bill Authority in order to provide a 50-year lease and partnership. And it's one piece of their capital stack to develop a project that's shown in this picture. It's 177 housing units. They'll be restricted to folks that work in that community. And then also there's 10 housing units for the Forest Service and for the permanent employees, and 30 for their seasonal employees. Finally, getting to philanthropy here, we have typical individual donors and contributing to both capital projects and operations of organizations. We have foundation grants, tend to invest in, get larger investments through foundations and targeted at specific classifications of employees. So your critical service providers, emergency service workers, teachers. And then more at the national level, we see that it's for lower income households. So households earning up to 80% of the area median income. In our high amenity communities, we see that going to a higher income level concerning that. And then I'm circling back to social impact investing, because it's really hard to understand whether that goes into a loan or whether it goes into philanthropy, because it's kind of a combination of below market kind of return on investment. So it can be really helpful with, especially with construction financing. And then I just wanted to bring up like the nonprofit organizations that are funded primarily with philanthropy. So we have the Jacksonville Community Housing Trust, Habitat for Humanity, that are funded through philanthropy. And then this is a picture of the Jamie's Place in the Methville Valley in Central Washington. And this is an example of philanthropy to create assisted living. It's they received $10 million in order to provide a piece of land, and then also to be able to double their capacity. It looks like a really cool place. And then in Bozeman, they were able to fund through philanthropy their homeless shelter, Homeward Point. They received about $5 million in philanthropy, which they leveraged with public funds in order to build a new homeless shelter. And then we've got, Teton Valley Housing again, shout out number 2. They received in philanthropy 5 years of funding for capacity for their executive director, and then also pre-development funding. Those are really difficult pieces to get funding for and are such an important piece. And so I highlight it here today. And then we've got Steamboat Springs, which $24 million donation to purchase 534-acre ground ranch just outside of Steamboat Springs in order to develop housing. So that's all I have, and it's good because it's dry, kind of tired of talking. And I'm excited to hear from the panelists on their projects. But I'm going to introduce Chris Greenhill. He's the executive director of Teton Habitat, and he's going to talk about the Benson Brown Station project. This is an ownership project.
Good morning. Thank you, Community Foundation, for letting me be a part of this. Happy to talk about Parkside at Benson Brown Station, but I'll give you a little bit of background on Teton Habitat generally. So we've operated in Teton County or greater Teton area since 1995 as an affiliate of Habitat for Humanity International. We build for home ownership only. We exclusively serve the market between 30 and 80%. Steve was referring to AMI. We use median family income, which is a HUD determined number, housing and urban development, which in this particular time, they revise their numbers annually, but we currently, for a family of four, serve households making between 39,000 and 106,000, 38%. Our homeowners are selected based on need, willingness to partner, and ability to pay. We write, after the homeowners are selected, then Habitat writes the mortgage at a 0% 30-year fixed in, or 30-year fixed. So getting to Parkside, Parkside is a partnership with the Teton County and the Jackson-Teton County Housing Department. The land was purchased using spec dollars, and then the county also paid for the infrastructure, the subterranean infrastructure to be put in. The project is 18 townhomes. They're between 2 and 3 bedrooms, 1,207 to 1,297 square feet. And we are in the second stage of construction. Actually, we're building concurrently the second and third stage of construction, but we have selected all 18 families. The last 6 families were just announced a couple of weeks ago. So the final home buyers have been selected. But getting into the numbers and the capital, so we estimate at this time the project is going to cost about $7,330,000 to complete. We're building for about $316 a square foot. So in comparison to other building projects, we come in at a much lower rate per square foot. And that's because we self-perform much of the labor ourselves, and then we have a volunteer workforce, which is, of course, the kind of the key aspect of Habitat's work is getting volunteers involved in the building of their homes, building the communities, and giving the homeowners an opportunity to put their sweat equity hours into the homes. So each of the homeowners is required to put 500 hours of sweat equity into their housing. And that's accomplished by coming out onto the job site, volunteering with Restore, volunteering with Habitat in the administrative spaces. But getting back to the numbers here, so the appraised value of these homes, most recent phase 2 appraisal was between $240,000 for the 2 bedrooms and $270,000 for the 3 bedrooms. Now that's the price that we're going to sell to the homeowners. And so that appraised value includes the deed restriction. And it also gives Habitat the ability to first right of refusal to purchase the home back if the homeowners need to move for any particular reason. Of that $7 million that we're going to need to do construction, we get about 62% of that, or about $4,500,000 in from the WCDA, which is the Wyoming Community Development Authority. We have a relationship with them that's longstanding. We will go to them with the mortgages that we write, and they'll provide us with 95 cents on the dollar in capital to continue to build or to put away for another project. And so that represents about 62% of the total building costs for us. The other percentages are philanthropy is around 21% for this particular project. So about $1,400,000. And then we get grants both federally and locally for about $973,000, or about 14% of the cost of construction. And so we look at this, we're going to hear from some of the other housing organizations, and they're going to have a more complicated mix. We look at this as a very simple and very sustainable mix, which works well for our organization. Now, if you change any of these numbers, and I have them here, if we were to say have to purchase the land, so if in future Habitat builds, if there's a need for us to purchase the land using Parkside, or the acre-ish that we're on at Parkside, we anticipated if we were to have to purchase that land, about another $2,400,000-500,000 in land costs and infrastructure costs. So that would basically just change all the percentages, with the exception, of course, of the WCDA. So that percentage won't change. Our construction costs for vertical will roughly remain the same, but then we'll have to actually increase the amount of philanthropy we raise and the amount of grants that we apply for. And so in that particular scenario that I'm drawing out here, if we were to say have to purchase the land in this scenario, then our WCDA, the amount of funding that provides to us would drop to about 47%. our grants would drop to about 10%. Again, provided where we're at currently with the grants that we've applied for and the grants that we've received. And then our philanthropy would drop to about, or would raise to about 40%, and our in-kind would stay roughly the same. So having these partnerships, this is a great example of a public-private partnership that works well, because if Habitat were to have to go to the market and say, receive some financing, likely the organization would just bear the cost of that financing on our own, so that we could keep the pricing for the owners in an affordable range. And so when we talk about the 240 and the 270 that we're charging homeowners for the bedroom sizes, that in some cases is at the 30% max that we try to keep our homeowners in terms of their cost of home ownership to their overall budget. And so we work very hard to keep it as a very affordable rate for people that do enter our program. And so we accomplish that through the various means that I've been discussing, but obviously if we were to be put into a situation where we would need to go to the market, then we would explore a number of the options that we're going to hear from the other housing opportunities. So Habitat's been in a very fortunate situation for the last almost 30 years that we haven't had to go to the market. We will take out lines of credit to ensure that some of the building costs will remain back if there's a delay in any funding that we get, but we fortunately never had to tap into those lines of credit. And so, and I should make mention of the fact that this does not include any of Habitat's operating costs. So that's another side of the business, but I'm only including for this discussion the cost of actual vertical construction for the Parkside project. So at this point, I would introduce my colleague Annie Cresswell, the executive director of the housing trust.
And for April and Tyler, there's a booby trap right here that you're absolutely gonna wanna be careful of. And hopefully I will. Okay, I will echo my thanks to the Community Foundation for hosting and for all of you for coming out. This was a really remarkable turnout on mid-November freezing, our very first freezing cold morning. So thank you all for coming out and braving the cold. The Community Housing Trust is a 33-year-old not-for-profit affordable housing developer, and everything we do is focused on the development of new, truly affordable housing and managing the existing housing that we have built or acquired over time. We pick up where Habitat leaves off. We serve households that earn between 80 and 120% of area median income. But we also have a secondary charitable purpose that allows us to serve employees of some governmental organizations that earn more than 120% AMI. So teachers, nurses, and county employees, to name a few. To date, we have developed or acquired 184 homes, a mix of for sale and for rent, everything from condos to single family homes, multifamily housing, and everything in between. And we're currently under construction on the corner of Redmond and Hanson, building 20 new affordable townhomes. In order for the Community Housing Trust to develop housing in Teton County, Wyoming, we rely on public support from the town, county, and the housing department. We proactively partner with many of our community's essential employers. And of course, we couldn't do what we do without generous private philanthropy in Teton County. I mean, there's nobody in this room that is unaware that there is incredible philanthropy that we are all the beneficiaries of. As the cost of construction and the subsidy per unit has increased over the years, we have prioritized partnerships and innovative solutions that would help us more efficiently and effectively address this problem. With the support of, I think, a uniquely bold board that has been willing to invest in new ideas over the years, we've managed to develop a handful of financial and legal tools that have helped us to develop new models for partnership, made new models possible, and also allowed us to raise meaningful capital. Each of these partnerships have had an impact on project pro formas in different ways, and I'm going to share a few examples of those with you here now. In 2007, we worked with the Teton County School District to develop 11 affordable homes for teachers. And born out of this effort was the creation of a new model that for public-private partnership that is today the basis for public-private partnerships across Teton County, Wyoming. In our partnership with the school district contributed the land at no cost. land that was generously donated by Albert and May Schwabacher in 1969. Because we are a not-for-profit organization with not-for-profit overhead, and because we don't build a profit margin into our project pro forma, we were able to sell the homes at Schwabacher Meadows for the actual cost of construction. The project revenue generated from the sale of the units entirely offset the vertical cost of construction. And this is certainly the only time in the 33-year history of the Housing Trust where the economic stars have aligned such that subsidy has not been needed for the vertical construction and subsidy for just the land was sufficient. 13 years ago, you can see there that, so the project revenue here in the capital stack amounted to 66% of the total project cost, and the capital gap was completely covered by the land contribution from Albert and May. Okay, so in 13 years ago, rather, I teamed up with then Mayor Mark Barron and then Town Manager Bob McLaurin to create another tool that has enabled dozens of partnerships over the years. And Christine touched on this, but it's a horribly named tool, but it says what it is. It's the employer right of first purchase. The EROP is essentially an option agreement purchased by an employer that allows their employee to purchase an affordable home. The cost of an EROP has been priced to be equal to the subsidy that is required to develop the unit. The employer determines which employee will have the opportunity to purchase the unit. The employee purchases the unit directly from the housing trust. And if the employee leaves their employment, that right revolves and it opens up for a new employee to purchase the unit. The sale of rights of first purchase have helped many employers get what they need, which is housing for their employees. And at the same time, it has helped the housing trust raise meaningful capital that we don't then have to otherwise ask of taxpayers or our generous donors. King Street is our most recent example where we have layered rights of first purchase to diversify our capital stack and minimize the philanthropic lift of the project. So you can see here the land and the total cost of hard and soft. We have project revenue from the sale of the affordable condos, 24 affordable condos amounted to 51% of our total project cost. On King Street, because this was a half a block off of Jackson Town Square, this is in the multi-use district, so we took advantage of some zoning and developed and sold 2 commercial spaces on the first floor, and that helped us raise some additional project revenue. But then that still left us with a capital gap that was 37% of the total project cost. We plugged this gap with land that was donated by the Jackson Town Council, additional capital contribution from the Jackson Town Council, philanthropy, and the sale of 4 rights of first purchase. Because we were able to close that capital gap, we were able to provide stable, truly affordable housing to 41 people in our community. And we were able, as this slide indicates, able to serve a wide range of income earners. As you can see, in 2018, we created a master lease tool to help raise capital for the development of 28 affordable rentals on Redmond Street. And in this pilot program, we sold 4 master leases to community partners, Teton County Sheriff's Auxiliary, Teton County Library Foundation, Teton County Search and Rescue. And then we actually had a donor that purchased one on behalf of multiple artists in our community, believing so strongly that artists are an important part of the character and fabric of our community as well. As you can see from a snapshot here of our project pro forma at Redmond Street Rentals, like the rights of first purchase, we were able to raise meaningful capital from the sale of 4 master leases, and that amounted to about $1.5 million that we did not have to go out and ask donors to help support. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So in case it hasn't jumped off the screen at you, there are very different capital requirements for a residential development that is for sale versus for rent. Christine started to go over this, but this is an example of how it plays out and has played out for our organization. So at Schwabacher and King Street, we were able to cover between 50 to 66% of the total project cost from the revenue that we earned on the sale of those affordable homes. When we go to the financial marketplace to borrow money for the development of affordable housing for rent, The total amount that we can borrow is limited to the amount of rental revenue that remains after we fund all costs of operations, maintenance, and we fully fund the replacement reserve that are required to maintain that asset. It was hard, but we did it with the support of the town, the county, and the housing department at Redmond Street Rentals, as well as generous donors, the sale of master leases. And we're grateful that we did, because we have now, since 2018, served 108 people. Again, across a wide range of incomes in our community. So, hope that helps explain in real time how it plays out for our organization. And now it is my pleasure to help make sure that people are here. Here's my door.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is April Norton. I am the director of the Town and Counties Affordable Housing Department. Thank you to the Community Foundation, Wendy, Lori, others for having or hosting the event today. Housing Department, that's really fun. We are a town and county joint department. We have about 1,000 homes in our portfolio that ranges from single family ownership homes to multifamily rental units. We serve a very broad spectrum of individuals. So you just heard from Chris, Habitat for Humanity serves households earning less than 80% of median income. You heard from Ann, the Housing Trust serves households earning less than 120%, primarily, with a few exceptions for folks earning more than 120%. The Affordable Housing Department has an affordable program. We serve households earning less than 120% of median income in that program. We are also adding a new income range that will serve households earning 120 to 160% of median income. And just to give you an idea, that's like 2 teachers working full-time, 2-person household. They actually make more than 120% median income. So thinking about how do we ensure that we have income and asset restricted, that means price restricted homes for people who are living and working here in the Valley. We also have our workforce program. This is a really interesting program because when we created this, this was intended to serve households earning more than 120% of median income. So they therefore could not qualify for affordable housing. But what we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years since this program came into being is that it's actually serving households earning anywhere from 50% to 250% of median income. And most of those households are still spending less than 30% of their income on housing. So it's interesting. I think it's something we're watching because it's new. We don't really know exactly how it's going to continue to behave in the market. That's us. So we serve very low income households up to households earning a really nice income here in the Valley. Since the Housing Action Plan was adopted, it was adopted in late 2015. I was hired in July of 2016. We've seen really great success, I have to say. The 7 years before Housing Action Plan implementation, we were able to build as a community 79 permanently deed-restricted homes. About 2/3 of those were capital A affordable, and about 1/3 of those were workforce or employment-based. And the 7 years immediately after Housing Action Plan implementation, we were able to build 115 homes. 72 of those were affordable, the balance were workforce. And this year, we've completed 111 homes, which is kind of astonishing. That's through 3 public-private partnerships, and I'm going to talk about 2 of those today. First one is Jackson Street Apartments. Do y'all remember when it looked like that? It looks like this now. And it is providing 57 rental homes for 170 individuals in our community. 1, 2, 3-bedroom units. The rents range from $670 a month for a 1-bedroom that's serving a household earning less than 50% of median income to a little over $3,000 for a 3-bedroom unit serving a household that's a workforce household. So no income restrictions there. And then it's serving households earning, again, less than 50% of median income up to over 120%. Here's capital side. I tried to make it look like Christine's a little bit. This development cost $52.9 million to build, and a big reason for that is because the land was so expensive. Hard and soft cost $35.8 million, land was $17.1 million. That comes out to $928,000 per unit. Hard and soft cost 68% of the development costs. The land was 32%. That's because 6 of the 10 lots were in the lodging overlay. And so lodging overlay property is worth more, and we were very lucky to have a wonderful partner to help us bridge that capital gap. We did that through social impact investments, philanthropy, below market debt, and then public funding. So we're going to build from the bottom up. Public funding, $14 million, 26.5% of the overall capital stack. The public funding in all of our projects are de-risking the rest of the capital stack, okay? So public funding goes in the line. Here, philanthropy, $11.5 million, 22% of the overall capital stack. Then we have social impact funding, that was $13.4 million, that's 25% of the capital stack. And then we have a below market note or below market loan here, for 14 million at 26.5% of the overall capital stack. The debt here was guaranteed by our development partner, so the Cumming Foundation in this scenario. The county's contribution of $14 million equaled some employee rights of first rental, which Ann touched on. We also sold a couple other employee rights of first rental to human service organizations in the valley. We are utilizing the 2-for-1 workforce housing bonus tool, which I would be remiss to say that all of the projects we've heard about today that are local have used some sort of density bonus tool, and that is because the land is so expensive here. It helps us reduce that land cost per unit if we can build more units on the land. And then we also have an expedited planning process because this is a 100% restricted development. Next one, this is Flat Creek Apartments. This is what it used to look like. It's what it looks like now. It's 48 rental homes, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The rents range from $691 a month to a little over $2,000 a month for the unit. And we're serving incomes between less than 30% of median income to less than 60% of median income. It costs $29 million to build. Hard and soft cost $24 million, land cost $5 million, and that is the appraised value of the land. Per unit, that comes out to a little over $600,000 per unit. 83% of the per unit cost or the overall development costs are hard and soft costs. And then again, the balance there, 17% is the land cost. How we make this work. Again, public funding goes in first. Less local public funding. Town of Jackson, land, Town of Jackson, cash, 20%. We received ARPA funding, $1.25 million. The town, the big secure. We have home and national housing trust funds. That's another $2.345 million. We have investor equity via the low income housing tax credit program that Christine talked about. We got 9% credits here. They're again 4%, 9%. 9% brings more equity to a deal. 9% are quite hard to get. We're really thrilled to get this one. And then debt, $6.34 million. Overall federal funding, you heard Christine say, typically we want it to be around 70% if it's a 9% deal, 58% here. Again, our cost of construction is quite high. The debt was security guaranteed by our development partner. And we had an expedited planning process here as well because it was 100% restricted housing. Tools we talked about, social impact, dollars, philanthropy, low market debt, federal funding, local public investment, the form of money, but also in the form of zoning, planning. Those are important tools. And then all of this is made possible by public-private partnerships. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Tyler. He's going to talk about South Park Loop Road, another density bonus.
Morning, everyone. My name is Tyler Davis. I'm going to save the worst for last. I learned a lot from all of you over the years. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to give you a little bit different look and look at it from the private side and kind of summarize what for land's very expensive, building costs very expensive, straight private side. The math doesn't work. It's not going to work. We need something. You know, every time we do a project, I was involved with the entitlement process design for Teton Gables Apartments there, sold that, but still managed to help out with that. South Park Loop Road, that was the density bonus. Very lucky to be chosen by the county to do 105 or still. That was 30. Part of the team there to do 30 workforce condos, for sale condos. And then with part of the team on Flat Creek Apartments, Light Tech project, get 48 rental units. So every time we go through these projects, I talk to the public, right? We go to the grocery store, whatever, like, oh, that's not affordable, that's not affordable, it's not affordable. Relative terms, as you all know, but when you look into the numbers, you're going to find out that these margins are negative. It's very tough to make work. So I think from a developer side, what really does work or help is getting some incentives like have been mentioned. One of the ones I'm a big fan of, I think it's called a ton, is a 2-for-1 bonus the town put in. Basically, you have a floor area ratio, you're allowed to build a certain amount. The 2-for-1 bonus allows you to go over that. You can fit it within your setbacks and your heights. You have a 3D block you gotta fit in. You still gotta meet all the other requirements, landscape ratio, parking ratio, you gotta meet all that. But it allows you to go over the square footage and get extra density. South Park Loop Road is the one that, it sat on the market for about a year. It's at the time, this land was highest and best use was a single family home that had a older single family home on it. About the week that the town changed the rules, I went and looked at it and immediately it kind of made sense. So with the zoning, the FAR floor area ratio is 40%, so you're allowed to build 40% of that, gets you 10,802 square feet. With the 2-for-1 bonus, I was able to get that to over 19,000 square feet. So using today's value, like April said, about 5 million for a Black Creek, that was about an acre. This is like 0.62-ish. So it gets you about a little over $3 million for that lot if you would go buy it today. So I did your 3.1 million divided by your square footage for your base floor area ratio with your 2-for-1 ratio. As you can see, price per foot goes from $292 down to $160 per buildable square foot. Huge difference. Now you got an extra margin of 132. That 132 could be your profit, but allows you to get flexible with your prices. All right, so gonna go over that project a little bit. Again, today's dollars of what that cost per foot is. Today, that project would be about $600 a square foot. Every project varies. Mercil is a little bit more, Black Creek is a little bit less, kind of depending mainly on how your parking structure is going to be. South Park Blue, it's tucked under parking. You got to basically elevate your parking, build 2 floors above it. So about $600 a square foot there. Soft cost, they really beat down as much as they could, about 12%. Sometimes it's more, but especially financing costs today with cost of funds a lot higher today. And then your land cost, like I used that from the previous slide, 160. So we're at $832 a square foot. That's not affordable. We all know that for the average person to walk in and pay that, it's not affordable. That's just break even for myself here. So I'm gonna give you an example, and as affordable is relative, what's affordable one person may not be for another. So what I'm gonna use as a reference point is from the housing department's website of the ranges for sale and for rent projects or units, sorry. So looking at the cost per foot, we're using 500 square foot 1 bedroom as our example. You're at $416,000 to get that unit, and this is going small units. I think something we did really well at Mercil was smaller units to make them absolute cheaper, not as much price per foot, but absolute cheaper. We sold those units, the cheaper ones, for $375,000 per unit. So as you can see, the 0 to 50, you're upside down by $314,000, and as you move up, it's less, but you're upside down in all the projects. And I think something that we run into as a community without looking at the numbers, without looking in the details, it's like we need more affordability, But as you want more affordability, your gap gets larger. And how do we fill that gap? So that's why I'm a big believer in the 2-for-1. I'm a big believer in the workforce. Every study that April and team has put out, the workforce units are still a little bit cheaper, but in market. So 10 to 12% cheaper than your market unit. So it is cheaper. Is it absolutely cheap? It's still a lot, but they are full. I know somebody told me, well, they're unaffordable. They are filled. Somebody is paying them. Does work. So I'm a big believer in getting the best that we can. It's not a perfect scenario, but I really like getting those affordable units. So this is a for sale product, right? Where we're going to build these and sell these. This is why from the private side, you can't do all affordable units. It just doesn't work without some type of subsidy or something. So here's a for rent comparison. For rent comparison is a bigger loss. 0 to 50%, you're kind of totally break even because you have the expenses to carry this. Me renting a 500 square foot unit to a 0 to 50% AMI, my expenses are relatively the same. My insurance company is not going to give me a discount. Snowplow guy is not going to give a discount. And also in these 3 affordable, landlords paying the electric bill, trash is the same. So a lot of your expenses are the same. Some of the ones that will be cheaper taxes, there will be a little bit of some savings in terms of expenses. But as you can see, bigger losses there. you are in this at a 5 cap, you can debate on what your value should be at a 5 cap, 4.5. Is it going higher? We have not seen cap rates move a whole lot in Jackson with interest rates. They should follow, but with interest rates right now, you're paying more than 5% at the bank and you're getting 5%. So that is a, I feel, best case scenario here. If we move back to a 5.5 or 6 cap, the loss becomes larger. So our solutions, back to what everyone said, private-public partnerships, again, very lucky to do the 2 we did. I think they were both a success. Got a lot of housing, got a lot of people heads and beds, as Dave would say. We need to work on incentives. There's been a lot of great ones. There's been really good waiving of fees for these projects, things like that. Philanthropy, and then something I have used is sort of like mixed use projects. Something that really helped us at Brazil is allowing the commercial. I know there's some pushback on that, but when you add it, you have 2 levels of parking at Brazil. You add that in, we're 600 plus per foot for the habitable space. You sold those units to 700 something range. Do the math, you're making 30 to 50,000 units profit over 4.5 years. But we were able to sell the commercial at a much higher price. Commercial is actually cheaper to build in a way, let the tenant build it out, so it's actually cheaper, less plumbing, less bathrooms, less kitchens, so it's actually cheaper. So to make it work, you have to have market units. So like South Park had 20 long-term rentals and 60 restricted. I believe Gables is around the same, and you have to have a mix of market units and your affordable or workforce units to make it work. Just straight private side. Doing all affordable is not gonna work. It's gonna be upside down. You're gonna be upside down by millions of dollars. All right, panel is next.
Good job. Well done.
That was my charger, so we're good. All right, so we're getting ready for our panel. We're gonna kick it off with one question that all the panelists will answer, and then we can invite you all to chime in with your questions. If you're more comfortable writing them, please use the note cards in the back. I'm happy to collect those as well. So Christine, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, so it's one question, but it's really 2 questions. So how has your capital stack changed over time? And then how can we improve collaboration? And let's just go the same kind of how we did the panelists. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Well, I could say that our capital stack has remained the same as far as my history with Habitat has gone. So our project that I walked in on was the Grove. There was another partnership with the county. Habitat, again, follow the simple rules that we follow when it comes to the ability to build this type of housing was to maintain a relationship with WCDA, apply for grants, federal home loan grants, some local grants, but then we go to philanthropy to bridge the gap. And so that's been true for the Grove, worked successfully for us there, put us in a position with the WCDA funding to go into the Parkside project with funding in hand, so that we can pay some of the upfront costs for construction and then move into the vertical construction without having, again, to go out to the market to get any kind of financing. And then what was the second part of your question? So again, it's been sustainable for us, and I've been fortunate to be in the slot that I've been in that I haven't had to get as creative as some of the other housing developers. That's not to say that won't be the case in the future, and we'll be well prepared to do that if that's the case. And then the second part of your question.
How can we improve collaboration?
Clarify, between organizations or between the community and the organizations, or just writ large? Well, I think having these types of panels is very helpful for communicating to the community about what the costs actually are for development. And so you've heard from the private side, how expensive it is to develop. You also see that we rely, all of us that are in housing, we rely on philanthropy a great deal to make any of this happen. And so having that message out in the community to demonstrate, there is the need, of course, for housing, but then the other side of that is, of course, what it costs to build to actually make housing truly affordable for all of the spectrum of our community. And so I would say, you know, continuing to host these kind of panels, the kind of dialogue that the Community Foundation has undertaken with the development of the dashboard, I think has been really helpful. Again, it brings groups together to discuss, and then we actually can see some progress being made on what's the broad understanding of the cost of construction, the cost of development, and then where are the gaps from the community in terms of where is housing coming from that's going to service all levels of the community. And so I would say that that initiative has been super helpful. And then I think just maintaining the kinds of relationships that we've built over time with each other as organizations for housing, making sure that we keep an open dialogue about who we're serving and how we can best serve those communities, and learning from each other, and essentially, yeah, just continuing a all fronts approach to this, I think is the only way that we're going to be able to address this issue. And I don't think that there will be any one thing that completely solves this. It's going to take all effort from everybody at this table and everybody in the community.
Okay, I guess as far as how's our capital stack changed over time, I would say that as a cost of land and the cost of construction have increased exponentially, it has transformed this problem in my 21 years from being what has long been considered a chronic problem in Teton County that on balance increased incrementally over the years to now being a really big problem. And I think it's going to force all of us to think very differently about how we address this problem. And so I think while we have done everything we can to innovate in this space and figure out how we more efficiently, effectively address the problem, at the same time, financing has gotten more challenging and more difficult, and tools that were available to us before the pandemic are now gone. And we don't have those access to those tools anymore. So it does feel, as I'm sure you've probably heard today, like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, this major battle. How can we collaborate? I guess to echo a little bit what Chris said, I think the more that we can all work together and coordinate and communicate, all stakeholders, all constituents, the better we will all steward scrupulously the scarce resources that exist to address this issue, whether it is philanthropy or financing or funding or human capital that makes these projects come out of the ground, like Allison and Jen and my staff. I think that then we will be better responsive and better stewards of donor dollars, taxpayer dollars. We will just be better responsive to our constituents, whether it's a co-op member, Lower Valley Cooperative, Lower Valley Energy, or whoever you're speaking with. I think we will be more efficient.
Okay, so I came in 2016. I'm a newbie. Chris and I are newbies compared to Ann up here. Before the Housing Action Plan was adopted, the Housing Authority would build a project, and they would start to plan for the next project, and they would build that project. They start to plan for the next project. They'd build that project, and they were at risk for the dollars to build the projects, and it was all on them, right? I mean, and Christine, she led a lot of this work. Great homes were built, and it's a large part of the foundation of our affordable workforce housing success in the Valley. And also it took time. And I think what we as a community said after the 2012 comprehensive plan was adopted, and we set a goal of 65% resident workforce, and we fell below that goal. We said, okay, we've got to do something different, because having Habitat build some homes every few years, and the Housing Trust build some homes every few years, and the Housing Authority builds some homes every few years isn't actually keeping up. We're falling behind, and we saw that in the numbers. So we shifted to a public-private partnership. And I think we all, every project that was talked about up here besides yours, although you do have some sort of public, I'd say, utilizing the incentive tools at South Park Loop, but you know, there's some form of public-private partnership in these developments. And that spreads out the public resources, whether that's money or land or both. And it mitigates the public's risk, but it also allows us to build more at the same time. And so again, we, 111 homes have gotten certificates of occupancy this year. That is like a phenomenal number. And that's 3 projects. So that's because we were able to work on 3 projects at once instead of just one project in construction, one project in planning. And so I think over time, to make that work, we've had to access different types of capital, whether it's below market debt. I have a couple bankers in here looking at y'all, would love to continue to build upon that success. Federal funding, certainly local funding, whether it's specific purpose excise tax dollars, fee and lieu dollars, general fund dollars, and philanthropy. Again, every project is different. You pull on the different types of levers depending on who you're building for. And I think that's part of the work. And so as new tools arise, and I think Anne pointed this out earlier, when the employee rights of first purchase started, a decade and a half ago, that was a housing trust idea, right? But we fed forward and stolen that because it works. And I think we are constantly looking to other communities to see what's working there. They're constantly looking to us. It's a pretty tight knit community. I was telling Christine earlier, on Bone Lions, Colorado yesterday, they're trying to figure out their housing program. I mean, it's everyone is looking at everyone else because there is no silver bullet, unfortunately. And then I think in ways to improve collaboration, I think celebrating our successes collectively is really important because we have a very, very successful program. I mean, yes, it's daunting. We're looking at 10 to 15% of our workforce retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. That's scary. Also, we have over 1,500 permanently protected homes here in the Valley for people who are living and working locally. And that's huge. That is besides Aspen, we are exceeding, we sort of are at the top of the mountain that way. And so I think we need to celebrate those successes. I think we need to get real with one another when something doesn't work. And I think we need to try, and again, I have this written on my whiteboard in my office, implement, evaluate, change. Like, let's do it. Let's figure out how, what worked, what didn't. Let's make changes and do it better the next time. And so I think just celebrating that and being willing to have those honest conversations will help us going forward.
For capital stack, for me, it has gotten tremendously hard in the last couple of years as interest rates have gone up. Not only to make a pro forma work, where you were putting in below 4% a few years ago, now you're 7%, you've almost doubled that. That makes it really hard, but I would say the biggest struggle I'm running into is every project I do, I don't have the money to do it, so I'm borrowing from the bank and I'm going to get investors. When I go to an investor, like, hey, do you want to make 6, 7% or whatever it is compounded? Like, I can go get a treasury now or go put my money in the bank, risk-free, don't do anything and make, 4 to 5%, where a few years ago it was very low. So their opportunity to invest has changed a lot, and that makes it really hard for me to go compete with them. That's very tough. I've passed on a lot of projects the last couple of years to do it. The other thing, capital stack is struggling as our costs have gone up, right? We've all had the inflation, these costs are going up. A project is bigger and bigger, the loan needs to be bigger. I've emailed some of you bankers in the last 2 days, like, hey, what do I have to do to get a non-personal guaranteed loan? Everybody said no. So I don't qualify to guarantee these loans. So me trying to get somebody to come sign the debt, even though I think it's very low risk, getting somebody first to sign a guarantee is almost impossible for these size of numbers that I'm running into. For collaboration with the town and county, I feel there's been a lot. I would like to continue to talk about incentives and see what's there. And it's so easy for me to say, hey, just do this, it's simple. And then go through the planning process, and it's very complicated. There's all these unintended consequences. But I think they've done good. But I want to continue that process, educating the public. I think when everybody thinks you're going to build a unit for 200,000 and sell it for $1 million, and you're making 800,000, that's just not realistic. So educating the public on what the real numbers are. And then I also think that, I tell all business owners, like, whatever business you're in, you also need to be in the real estate business. If you're in the restaurant business, Joe's in real estate, whereas, you got to take care of your own people and not rely on these nonprofits, not rely on the government subsidies. We also have to do that. So I think between all of that is how we attempt to tackle it. I do think it's unsolvable to an extent because it is such a pretty place and everyone's live here, but I think that's the collaboration.
Thank you. I want to open it up to any questions from the audience. Have a hand back.
Thank you. Using the Redmond project as an example, what do you use to estimate your operating maintenance, replacement, all those things that as a landlord you need to set aside and that the banks are interested in as well, or lending in organizations. Is there some guidance you use? I mean, it's gonna vary from building to building.
Yeah, I'm gonna punt to Allison and let her explain it, because that's her.
Hi, I'm
Day
Allison
to
Lee.
day.
I work with Anne and, you know, I think the market standard for operating and maintenance ratio is about 35 to 45%. And, you know, we have, and you mentioned this briefly as well, Tyler, you know, we have a tax advantage being a nonprofit that kind of helps with that ratio, but we come out at about 43%. For the same reasons that Tyler talked about, you know, our insurance is market rate, our snowplow is market rate, like all our costs and expenses are market rate, and our rents are affordable. So that pushes up the ratio. So we're at about, you know, 43%, I think. One of the things that I think is quite different is our approach to replacement reserves. We're very, very conservative on replacement reserves, and that's because, you know, we've used the philanthropy for this project. It's gone. So we can't go back to that source. It's not like we have investors who are making, you know, a profit over the years on this, and we can go back to those investors and say, hey, we actually need to make these capital improvements, you know, and we'll be able to put the rent up, and the investors will say, great, yeah, that works. So we're very conservative. So I'd say we're about 15% of our gross rent is in replacement reserves. And so that is what reduces, you know, your net income and cash flow available.
And that's in addition to
The
There you go,
43%, yeah,
can I ask one more?
sure.
Do you have online templates for, or examples of master business leases?
I do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, yeah, Tyler, super interesting. Thank you for taking us through the numbers. Daunting is the word. Can you talk a little bit more about the workforce product and what the numbers look like on that from a developer standpoint? And who's buying it, and if that product is kind of helping subsidize some of this affordable in some way?
Yes, the best thing from the developer side is there's no rent restriction. So there's not like a number that you max out on. So it's great that you can adjust it yearly, you can adjust it accordingly to the market. So again, I priced them about 10% below market, but that's still higher than all the affordable rates that hold. So basically it's free density extra. So if you can kind of make it work here, there is a margin. You're still profitable on workforce, not as much as the other, but the overall absolute money can go up. So that works. You know, we still, the requirement is 30 hours average a week, 75% of income is earned locally. So the great thing is you don't have a remote worker there. So it's still, I think, accomplishing a huge need of putting local workers in those units. And the market still does dictate the rent, right? We can't rent them in the deed restriction. They can't be vacant for so long. So once it's vacant so long, you've got to drop your rents, get them rented before you get in trouble with April.
So what's the profile of the workforce renter?
All types of locals. I mean, literally, we've got every type of worker, construction, got restaurant workers. We do have hospital. Everybody that shows up, and usually what happens is when we've rented things, renting out the gables, ownership had their rent sheet, and everybody calls, I just want the workforce sheet. I want the workforce sheet. It's a little bit cheaper. They take it. They're signing up. They have to submit their paperwork every year, show what they make and the affidavits of where they're getting their income and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's your everyday full-time worker in town.
And those are helping the numbers overall for the project?
Correct.
If you look on page, I think 22 or 25, the housing supply plan from this past year, there's a list of all the employers that have employees living in workforce housing. It's about 5 pages long, but it's everybody. I mean, it's the school district hospital, it is every cleaning service, it's, you know, I mean, it's everyone in between. So it serves certainly a broad spectrum. Some of that is because we have a dearth of rental housing here. We know that, right? We don't have enough rental housing. And so people are taking what they can get, certainly, but we're seeing households on the rental side from, you know, earning half of median income up to 250% of median income there. And then on the ownership side for workforce, most of those households earn 80 to 200% of median income.
I think, at least in my line of work, it's pretty amazing to see you guys work so collaboratively when you still are literally competing for the same commodity in this tiny little market. So I'm curious, as you each run your pro forma, as you say no, do you pass it on to the next organization to see if it will work for them?
I don't know that, like, I'll start, because we're different, like, we are a lot of times looking to the people up here and saying, hey, we give you, if we buy the land here and we put in the infrastructure, Chris, will this work for you? If we buy the land and give you some cash in, will this work for you? Tyler, if we buy the land and go out and get some federal funding, can you make this work? So it's a little bit different for us because we're a little less reliant on philanthropy for most of our projects. We are very reliant on our partners though, to go out and secure, whether it's equity or philanthropy or, whatever that looks like. Debt, et cetera. So we're a little different. I think there's less competition that way. I think we're more of we're the public, funding in each of the programs versus we're competing for the same buckets of funding. I don't know what they do.
I don't know how I would answer your question, Mac. It's an interesting question, and I think it's going to get more challenging as everyone is getting into this game, and it's not just the Housing Trust and Habitat going to the same small well of donors. The hospital has a very significant project of going to get going at the hitching post. The school district has taken a big bite out of the apple. And every employer in Teton County is facing this issue, and it's going to get worse with time. And that's why I think we have scarce resources to address this problem. And I think that the more that we can work together and coordinate in a way that eclipses what we've been doing to date, because there's been a lot of that, but that is not going to get us to where we need to be. And not going to help us address this problem as efficiently and effectively as we can, given how expensive it is to address this issue. And I think that's the number one thing that we need to be thinking about and coordinating about, so that we can, because every time we are, inefficient, it adds cost to this. Every time we lose a year, it just has a gigantic impact on project pro forma. So I guess how I would.
Can I, two more things that I'm thinking about, right? One is, this is the Community Foundation's event. I'm super hopeful that we're gonna see more social impact funding coming to bear on these projects, because I think that's something that's been missing, and something that there are so many really high net worth individuals, families that live in this valley who I think have interest in having their dollars used more than one time on affordable workforce housing development. So I'm super excited that the Community Foundation's in this space, and I'm excited to see how you all grow that part of the work that you're doing, because I think that's critical for us. The other piece is, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's hard to get some of these projects through the public process. Whether it's Northern South Park or 90 Virginia Lane. I mean, everybody's a traffic expert. Everybody, it's just it's all of a sudden, I had no idea. I knew so many engineers, but it's hard, right? And that's risk that you can't account for, right? That's when you're going out to investors, that's risk for you. When you're going to your donors, that's risk for them. And so thinking about how do we mitigate that risk? I think that honestly, that is socially us saying, yes, we the community are prioritizing affordable workforce housing for all the people who need it. And in various different, it looks different, right? It might be a single family home, it might be a multi-family apartment building, but we need all of them.
I would respond by saying that it would be a very rare opportunity that Habitat would not say yes to. I think you got that right. The point is that Habitat would absolutely look at any opportunity to build, and there'd be very few instances where we don't think that we would say no to it and maybe try to pass it along to someone else. Our mission is all about building affordable housing, and so it almost feels counter to everything we're about as an organization to say, not this one, that we don't build in any profit margin, but that's not the business that we're in at all. And we, with the board that I have now and the board that I've had in the past, we look to be creative about what we can do that would expand what we've done in the past. And we're sitting very close to an example of Habitat prior to the Grove had built very modestly, in terms of our scope of building. It had been single family, maybe a couple of, duplexes. I think there's a triplex somewhere in our history. But to take on 24 condominiums, was going to be a stretch for the organization. And when I came aboard, there was never this idea that, oh boy, we sure regret that we dove into this. Our take, and it's been inspiring to me, that absolutely we're going to do that. We're going to expand what we need to do to be able to take on a larger project like that. And we're going to exploit every resource that we can to accomplish that, with the end goal being that once we put 24 families in the phase that we build, they're going to be able to afford that unit for the length of their time in Jackson. So that's the only goal that we really consider is, are we able to do that and put homeowners in there? And it would take a really strange set of dynamics that would turn us away.
Hi, Joe Rice, Chris, and April Tyler. It takes a team effort to even try to get done work. Is being done and doing a great job. One thing that I don't think people realize, we're, being in two markets, both in Montana and Jacksonville, Wyoming, the rents aren't that much different. I mean, Christine's up there too. Everybody thinks our market is so expensive, which it is, right, for the workforce. I think employers, we build these units, the more we can build, the better for the community. They're all full, like Tyler said. One thing I don't think people also realize is, as an employer, you have to subsidize your. That's your job. I mean, you don't have a business in this community. Well, it's gotta be part of your business plan. Well, where do people want to live? The reason, we have a lot of housing in our company. We've been doing it a long time, but my point is we still subsidize a lot of people. Like, people might look at St. Louis rents and go, oh my God, they're so expensive. Yeah, they're still a little below what everybody else is, but there's a lot of people living in there that aren't paying those rents. To piggyback on what April said, trying to get something through in this town or county is ridiculous. The DRC is a roadblock. I mean, I don't see a lot of elections here. I saw a couple, I don't know if they're here anymore, but that's a total obstructive. We don't have it in the county, but we have it in the town. It's just one more step that we don't need, that puts more of a burden on getting things approved when we're trying to do the right thing. The 2-for-1 bonus, you don't have to read my questions. If there's talk right now about getting rid of the 2-for-1 bonus, that will kill housing, and not kill it, but it will hurt it very bad. Because we use that as a tool to house our people. There's other projects we're looking at, and that 2-for-1 bonus, I mean, we're housing first, but we also got to build something that can pay for that housing in that building. So with that 2-for-1 bonus, we can build more housing. And like Tyler said, the commercial or whatever will help offset that. So we don't want to get rid of that. The last thing, sorry, there's too many very wealthy people in this community that don't get involved. There are people that do, but it's like going back to the same people all the time. There's so many wealthy people in this community that could help solve this problem, or at least move it more quickly, that want everything. They want to go to a restaurant, they want to have the best service, they want whatever the service is, they want landscapers, they want whatever it is, but at the end of the day, they don't give a shit where these people live. And I don't care what people say, that's the truth. I've been here a long time. I've said this forever. And after these meetings, always come, oh, I'd love to do something, and you never hear from them again. So, sorry, my last thing is, where's all the electeds? I mean, where are they? I mean, there's a couple that were in here. Okay. Is, like, housing is one of the biggest issues in Jackson Hole. Where are they? They didn't have time, whatever. There's hardly any here. They were in and out, whatever. I mean, they run on proposing housing, on housing friendly, on blue collar worker, etc. But a lot of these guys are absent. Thank you.
What was the question, Joe? What's going on with Kate Clubnet?
Yeah,
Talk about.
that was Joe's rant.
Yeah.
But I was curious on the 2-for-1 bonus, like how you all feel about that, and you're probably getting rid of it.
First of all, thanks, Joe. Joe and we share an alma mater. He's less excited about Clemson than I am, but I like to bring that up. 2-for-1 bonus, I think, is a fantastic tool. Any density bonus tool is fantastic because land is expensive here. So anytime you're allowed to build more on the land, and I will say the project that the Housing Trust is building right now, they're using a density bonus tool. Parkside is using a density bonus tool. Black Creek, or not Black Creek, Jackson Street Apartments used a density bonus tool. 174 North King used a density bonus tool. Mercil condos use a density bonus tool. We can go on and on. So we have really successful different types of projects that are using density bonus tools. I think it's really important that we maintain those tools, period. Hard stuff. I know there's discussion around the 2-for-1. Are we getting enough with the workforce product? One person's opinion, I think we are. And I think the economics, I think if we change that, it starts to get very challenging. We do have a new affordable range coming on, the 120 to 160. I am curious to see, could the one be the 120 to 160? And I don't think we've run enough models on it to know. And I think it's healthy, again, going back to implement, evaluate, change. Like the 2-for-1's been around since 2018. It's time for us to look at it, to make sure that, to evaluate its effectiveness and to make upgrades to it if necessary. An upgrade is not getting rid of it, though. I think we certainly need to maintain our density bonus tools. Land is our most finite resource in the valley.
Yeah, once you start making that 1/3 or more affordable, the lower the affordability, the less they're gonna get built. That's just the scale of how it's gonna go. So, as you see, it's $800+ a foot, and I mean, that is like as cheap as we can bake something. So once it's worth less than 800 a foot, it's not gonna get built. So that's just the math of it.
I love what April said, for every engineer that is walking around Teton County, Wyoming, there's an equal number of statisticians around that are experts at what's affordable and what's not affordable, and I've heard this for 21 years, people bring their own personal private lens to the determination of what is affordable and what's not, and I think, it could add significant value to this discussion, this hyperbolic discussion that's happening in our community right now about the value of the 2-for-1 and what are we getting as a community if there was some evidence to put, disabuse everyone about like what is the actual community benefit and who is being served, and it's not been around that long, so it's probably something that is pretty quickish to figure out and to demonstrate and really show the community and take the hyperbole out of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that, because I just get excited about the housing supply plan this coming year. There's a whole section on that. But again, I'd say, looking back, the workforce program is serving people earning 50 to 250% of median income. Most of them are spending less than 30% of their income on housing. That's success. And a lot of those units, some of them are built through public-private partnerships or via the Housing Trust and Habitat for Humanity. But most of those are being built by the private sector. We're not putting in public funds. We're not putting in philanthropy. All of that philanthropy that everyone's trying to raise is getting to go to the capital A affordable projects. The public funds are going to other public-private partnerships. Again, the levers that we as a community can pull, and especially on the public side, include zoning tools, density bonuses, waiving some fees, getting through the process faster so that it doesn't take us 3 years to get into planning and building. That costs money, that they're carrying costs associated with that. So there are other levers. I think that density bonus tool is super important.
I think there were other questions out there, but I did want to read one that we got from a note card. Many other towns charge a lodging tax to visitors on hotel stays to use for housing. This is a recurring revenue stream that is paid by visitors, not local. As a tourist town, why do we not charge this in Jackson?
We do have a lodging tax in Jackson, and we have a resort fee tax for some of our resorts as well. The state does not allow, like it's a state statute. And there are parameters. You can't say you have a lodging tax and all that's going to housing. Some of it has to go back to the state, some of it has to go to promotion. I think you hear the lodging tax board talk a lot about they're shifting from just straight promotion to sustainable estimation management. And then some of it can go to infrastructure like START, primarily pathways, stuff like that, and some can go to operations of the town and county, but we do have a license tax, it's just state statute. Go talk to the legislature, super fun.
And logic expert.
I have a question about qualifications, using like Bristol as an example, Tyler, you had a huge list of people, buyers, qualifications. Can you guys speak to that, what were the challenges of people potentially be buyers? Conditions living, working in Teton County, I know there's cases where one person worked remotely, one person lived here, change their qualification, opportunities, et cetera. So I think that's a really important thing to talk about.
I'll take that. Yeah, we ran, so big thing that happened with us, we got caught in that interest rate run. So the interest rates started going up as we were trying to sell, so we lost a lot of people simply because they can't afford it. You know, monthly payments were going up $400 a month, and that was enough that they were out, they couldn't afford. That was just bad luck, unfortunate. But yes, we've run into that where you have somebody that does work local, the spouse does not, and all of a sudden it's like a 50-50 and they didn't meet. We've run into some of that. That was one of my comments to kind of maybe look at, was maybe it's I don't want to say case by case, we need black and white rules, so it's not up for judgment, but yeah, we did run into that where we've done it with rentals where it's like 73%. Actually, one time the story was like 73%. I actually called their boss, like, hey, they need a raise to get this 2% more to get 75. The guy got a raise and got into the unit, which is great. But yeah, we should run into some of that.
Yeah, so for the workforce program, at least one adult has to work full-time locally, that's on average 1,560 hours a year, or 32 hours a week. And the household needs to earn together 75% of their income locally. We take that rule back to the elected officials every couple of years. We just took it back to them and said, hey, are you sure that this is still the ratio we want, 75-25? Do we want to make any exemptions? The questions we had were like around critical service providers, et cetera. You know, I think, again, what's really important to our elected officials right now, at least, is that we're building homes for people who are living and working here. And if somebody is working remotely, you know, a lot of those folks could probably get a job here. And I think that's kind of what they're thinking about, Jeff, there. But I think that's, again, when we think about implement, evaluate, change, like as our community, as the global economy continues to change, you know, is that still the right rule in 2 years? And I think that that's something that's why we take our rules and regulations for our programs back to the elected officials every 2 years, because things do change. There are pandemics, there are, changes in the marketplace. So give that feedback to the electeds if you've got some there, because I think we just need to give them the feedback and let them know how their programs are working or not working.
I do think that we do need to educate the public, or in my belief at least, that it is great to own a unit. It's great to own. That's why I like Bristol so much, that somebody can buy it and own it. Like, oh, it's too much. And I would joke, what do you think it's going to be in 5 years? Do you think it's going to be in 10 years? Do you think rent's going to go up? Of course it's going to go up. In your unit, you can buy it, lock in 30-year mortgage. Like, I'm a big believer in buying, and I think a lot of people, so many times you hear the story in Jackson, I came for 2 years and I stayed. Like, a lot of people end up staying and they feel if they buy something, they can never leave. Like, I promise you that you can go to April's office and you can sell that unit pretty quick, because it's going to be restricted. There's a capital appreciation, so it's going to be cheap. You can sell it. And I think we need to get people to buy, to own, stay here long term, and then look back 10 years from now. Hey, you bought that in for $375,000. That's going to seem dirt cheap in 10 years. So I think that was trying to educate a lot of the buyers too. They got very cold feet when it came time to actually sign the dotted line, pay the money, get the mortgage, and they felt locked in, and we could always sell.
Yeah, and those all the units become, whether it's housing department program or housing trust program, they become more affordable over time because of that appreciation cap. Wages are going up faster than that appreciation cap. So a great example is you got CO at Versailles 2022. Right? And we actually had one of those units come up for sale, and it was almost an affordable 8120. Because it was because of the cap on appreciation and wages had gone up so much. It was within a few $1,000s, and we kept it out of workforce. But the next time one of those units comes up, I bet it's going to be an 8120, and we will recategorize it into a capital A affordable. So again, it costs a lot to build a capital A affordable today, right? But if we build workforce units that have appreciation caps, in 5-10 years, those will become capital A affordables. It's another nuance to that program. It's kind of hard to explain, especially, you know, when we're in a public hearing with elected officials, but I do think that's another benefit on the ownership side for the workforce
And I
program.
think that same benefit or that same strategy on rentals work well too. Let the developer build it, get market, whatever market is now, and then put some caps on market rates. So we don't see these 10, 20, 30% increases in rent, you have the 3% or CPI. So right now, you look at, hey, this is an investment as a community. It doesn't look that affordable now, but in 10 years, it's gonna be very affordable. And it gets built. I think that's a good strategy that I don't think we tried.
We have it at Hidden Hollow. There are about half of those units have a cap on rent rates at 2.5%. We're watching it to see how that works, what that looks like. Any other questions? That's really fine.
Appreciate the conversation on workforce housing, and Tyler, I think your example of being at the grocery store and someone indicated it's not affordable, or not do it. I think it's a common question that we all get, and well, you mentioned this in passing, but do we measure all of the workforce units and how much of their income is going to housing?
So every year we have to requalify every resident in a workforce housing unit. So whether they're a renter or a homeowner, we, you know, get affidavits of employment, we look at their tax returns, we look at their bank statements, we get called names because we're being too intrusive. But we can tell you, and that's what's in the housing supply plan every year, where they're working, how much they're earning, we see all the leases, how much they're paying, what hidden fees are not, you know, immediately obvious in the lease, because that's happening too, and how much that is. And so we look at all of that and then we report out on it, but in aggregate, we're not like going line by line or household by household, but we do that. And so again, those are those numbers in the supply plan. It's such a new program, we're just kind of watching it to see what happens and how it relates to the market. And the idea is that as more of those units come online, they can't be empty. And so, you know, if they start off at a price that's too high, that the market won't bear, then they're gonna have to reduce it because somebody has to live in it, or they're in default, and they go through a pretty expensive sort of default process. It's, you know, a daily fine, $750 a day per unit. It's, you know, nobody really wants that, but, you know, it's a baby program, but so far, it looks like most people in the program are spending less than 30% of their income on housing. But again, that could change. We could look at the numbers again at the end of this year and say that there's a big change this year. I don't know.
There's an application process for lot ownership, making sure that, you know, as an owner, you don't want somebody spending 60-70%, you're like, oh, this person's not gonna be able to pay, then I gotta go through eviction, nobody wants it. So a lot of the applications will check and see, make sure you're below that 40-ish% as well, but obviously a lot of couples, it's kind of how they get there as well.
All right, let's go over here.
April, you mentioned briefly Northern South Park, and obviously it's a huge housing opportunity for us going forward. Love to hear the panel's thoughts on how that's built out, especially in consideration of Christine's comment that even a 2-bedroom requires a $500,000 subsidy. Now, granted, the land cost is not factored in here, but how we build on the South Park.
Over time. You know, and it's gonna require this community to come together and decide and prioritize affordable housing. That affordable housing, workforce housing is essential and critical to the health of this community. And over and above other causes that are also important in this community, but we have a real opportunity at Northern South Park. With free land, and hopefully everybody got the message how essential free land is to the project pro forma and the equation. And I think it is, you know, I think it's just gonna be important that we understand that it will take time. But that also costs increase with time. So the more we apply ourselves, decide we're gonna come together and deploy resources and the lenders that April's looking at in the room. You know, we figure this out, come together and we figure this out, how we can, because of how we can put it together. And I think what's interesting to me is in the last couple of years, there's been so much focus on this issue, which is fantastic. And now we have, broadly speaking, lots of different puzzle pieces scattered all across the community. But we're not necessarily pulling together in the same direction, and that stymies our efforts collectively. So to the extent that employers and stakeholders and elected officials can come together and focus our efforts and pull together in the same direction, then we can more efficiently use these scarce resources and get housing to come out of the ground more efficiently and more effectively. So think it's, it's a bit of a crystal ball when it is going to get through that public process that we've all heard a lot about this morning, and it's got a lot of public process out in front of it. Is it gonna be 12 months? Is it gonna be 24 months? That is also about like this community coming together and saying, no, we can nickel and dime the details till we're blue in the face. Or we can say yes to housing and keep the ball moving forward. Is that helpful?
Anyone else?
Oh, I don't know.
Clarification on how the two went in here, because I think that the community still kind of loses this amendment. You said that, so you built how many at South Park with no public subsidy?
6.
6. So you got 6 units from the public sector, no public sector, from the private sector with no public sector, which is a win. And when people says lots of those are being built by the private sector, I think that it's a community, we often forget that, but people, I don't know if there's anybody here from St. John's, but do you happen to know how many more units they got in their new project? Because they were able to use the two.
Yeah, so St. John's built on 2 lots, NH1 zoning, it's 15 units total. Utilizing the 2-for-1 bonus, they got 9 extra units there.
So they would have only got 6, and so I think the community just needs to understand that the private sector is using it, and we're getting sort of units for free that are restricted, but the nonprofits are also using it. And so it's just a super important tool, and I think that right now I hope we all on the panel, I assume, support the 2-for-1, but there's been a lot of conversation about it, and so with all of you, like, if you are the electeds right now, would you maintain the program? Show of hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, like, it's a density bonus tool. We cannot get rid of density bonus tools, that's insanity, honestly. If we're talking about in a sort of just, looking at housing by itself. But again, I think it's healthy to, implement, evaluate, change, and so I think we're in that, we have an opportunity to really evaluate the tool. And to really clearly identify where it's working and how it's working, and if there are opportunities to make it even better, maybe it's 3-for-1. And we get capital A 50 to 80% units, maybe it becomes a tiered tool. I don't know, but I think that there's interesting conversations to explore there. And I think what I hear, we're gonna be doing that in the next coming, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. And I'm not an expert on the 2-for-1 tool. I hear enough of the questions and enough of the concern out in the community that I know personally. That it has been a huge benefit to our projects and our project pro formas, and at Hanson Corner, it allows us to serve 30% more people and reduce the cost per unit by 25, of the land by 25%. Like, that's real math. That's very helpful. But it's not worth sweeping it under the rug either, because there is so much concern out there. It needs to be addressed. I think the way you address it is with empirical evidence. It says it's working, it's done. It was a pilot project. We tried it and it's either working, it needs to be tweaked, whatever the whiteboard says. Like, I think that's a great strategy going forward, and I think we'll get there probably pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, it's great that there's no public subsidy. There's no plan to be needed, that we're getting housing, getting more supply. That's
We have, keeping an eye on time, another question out there.
Hi, Sophia with the North Counties. I should know this, but April, you mentioned retirement wave. Remind me where the rules are now for letting people in rentals that are deed restricted, retire, and like how that conversation is anticipated to change with a wave of fertilities.
Yeah, so the elected officials made some changes to the housing department rules and regulations, so I want to be clear that it's just our rules. Right now, you can retire in a home that you own that's deed restricted. We have quite a few of those households. You are required to remain living in your home. But you can stay in the house. For rentals, if you retired right now, we would say you need to move out. In about 2 weeks, that's gonna change, when the rules and regulations are formally adopted. And we will say you can stay in the home. And if you're a retiree, you can actually apply for affordable housing, so long as you worked for the 10 previous years before retirement locally. So again, trying to address some of the generational continuity concerns there. With the rising cost of home ownership and rentals on household-specific fixed incomes that have spent a long time here in the valley, not just people that are moving here because they want to retire pretty late.
Thanks. And is, how is that different from your rentals?
You know, our rentals are in part governed by the policies of the housing department because we have public funding that helped made the land acquisition possible, so their changes would parlay all over to our programs.
Yes.
Do you think the housing problem will ever be solved, especially with the influx of remote workers coming to the valley?
But we can do a better job than we've been doing, and we desperately need to do what we're doing because of retirees and because the cost of free market housing here is so expensive that there is not a single person without outside significant family support that is working in our workforce that is going to be able to afford free market housing. So when my kids are old enough, there's not gonna be a job that is paying a workforce wage in kind of Miami that is gonna support a fair market rental or football. So we really gotta figure it out.
I would answer that slightly differently, like, no, we're not gonna solve it. But as a community, we have said we value having most of our workforce live locally. Because we want not just people in jobs, but we want, like, I go to the soccer field and the basketball courts and look around and like most of the coaches live in affordable or workforce housing. Like, they're the people who are spending time, raising the next generation, who are Meals on Wheels, who are, I mean, like, that is really important. I think we have done fantastic work and we need to take a hot second to celebrate that. Over 30 years, we've done great work. And also, we have a lot of work ahead of us. So I think it's a both and. I think it's celebrate our successes, learn the lessons that we can learn, and then continue to build on that. I think, yeah, it's both and.
Yeah, I don't think we'll solve it, but we have solved it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that's important. So, every extra unit that gets filled, it's affordable, somebody's in there, solve it for that family. So I think that's what.
We have one more question. One last question. Yes, thank you all of you for all you do for housing the community. Looking forward, I know the housing supply assessment and it's coming out, but what are the needs going forward as it relates to unit size, unit type? Homes or what's the key about it?
I think a really simple answer is we need all of it. So we need everything. And I think we know through our 2022 housing needs assessment, which all of a sudden feels old to me, right? Like, I feel like, because a lot of that data is from 2021, right? So again, I think we do a pretty good job as a community continuing to study that. We also have our intake form data. I know that each of the housing organizations have their data. But we need rentals and we need home ownership. I can tell you from the housing department perspective, our most popular units are 1 and 2 bedroom units. 3-bedroom units are a little less popular for us. And it might be because Habitat and the Housing Trust are taking care of that. I don't know, but 1 and 2 bedroom units are really popular for us. 1-bedroom workforce units are the most popular thing. And I think part of that is because for many years we didn't build 1-bedroom units. So we just have fewer 1-bedroom units, and because of the rules around occupancy, some people, a single person cannot get to a 2-bedroom unit. So that is, they're fighting with couples to get to that 2-bedroom unit too. And sometimes, a family of 3. So, I think, broadly speaking, we're sort of building all of it. And I think, when I think about the future of housing, I think about Northern South Park and the type of product that the Housing Trust and Habitat will be building down there, potentially other housing developers down there too, because the densities, Northern South Park, if it's built out to the density that's allowed, will be the densest neighborhood in the entire community, right? And so, like, we're talking about some pretty dense product down there. And then I think about what we're building in town. I think we're trying to focus on both rental and ownership, because again, our community, my experience, your experience, Katie, right, is we moved here, we worked a few odd jobs, we rented, we shacked up with our partners, we ended up luckily getting into a house and having a family. Like, that's that is kind of the Jackson dream. That's how a lot of people sort of move through the marketplace. And I think making sure that we have opportunities for people to move through that marketplace actually speaks to community character a bit too, and just the culture of our home. That makes sense.
I don't have anything to add.
All right, well, thank you. We had enough requests to record this, and this is our best attempt at doing so. So once that's, downloaded and we plan, to put it up in the dashboard, on the dashboard under the housing, dashboard section. So please look for it and, you all know these wonderful people, so I will just give them